Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our session of this morning on mineral partnerships for a sustainable future, ensuring mutually beneficial partnerships for African industrialization. I'll be moderating this session today. My name is Djaheezah Subratty. I work at the UN Environment Programme, and I lead UNEP's work on mineral and metal value chains. Today, we have a very distinguished panel with us that will be helping us share perspectives and discuss ideas related to how partnerships can be leveraged for Africa's mineral industrialization ambition. Africa today stands at a defining moment. The continent holds more than 1/3 of the world's critical minerals, essential for the global energy transition and for the global digitalization transition. Yet, we know that Africa is yet to enhance its processing and manufacturing capacities to build more resilient value chains that generate jobs, technology, and shared prosperity across societies. Industrialization anchored in mineral value addition is not merely an economic imperative. It really is an opportunity to lift millions from poverty, empower youth and women in new industries, and strengthen Africa's position in a rapidly evolving green economy. This ambition can be guided by the UN Secretary General's panels on critical energy transition minerals. That was a panel that was actually co-chaired by South Africa from the continent and the EU as a partner, and brought together governments and civil society industry actors together. So as the continent industrializes, we'll hear from our panelists today how ensuring that the transition powering the world's clean energy future needs to be sourced in a way that respects human rights, protects ecosystems, and benefits people as well as the planet. This means investing in responsible value chains, in sustainable value chains, harmonizing regional policies, like under the Africa Free Trade Continental Act, deploying clean technologies, building stronger governance systems, looking at traceability, accountability, really calling for genuine partnerships between governments, private investors, the private sector, and communities. And I'm going to very briefly introduce our distinguished panelist. Emmanuel Makumba Mali is Director for Democracy and Governance Program at the International Conference on the Great Lakes region. Marietta Jäger is Deputy Director General of the Directorate General for International Partnerships at the European Commission. Bandi Mbubi is Executive Director of the Fair Cobalt Alliance. Vincent Dufief is Group Corporate Affairs VP of IMERIS. Sensi Awases is Vice President of the Association of Women in Mining in Africa and Project Leader of Powering Change Women and Critical Minerals. Sven Renner is Program Manager, Energy and Extractives at the World Bank. And Adan El-Kitri is Chief Integration Officer, SBU Mining of OCP Group. As you can see, we have a fantastic panel today, and we look forward to hearing from them. I'll start with Emmanuel. Emmanuel, given its large mineral resources, the Great Lakes region has long been, and more than ever remains, at the center of global attention on mineral supply chains. Recent mineral partnerships with major importing countries, such as the US DRC deal, have made the headlines. From your experience and based on recent events, are African countries receiving their fair share from these agreements? What risks and opportunities do these partnerships present for the region?
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. And should I say all protocols observed. On behalf of the International Conference on the Great Lakes region. I would like to thank the organizers of this roundtable, and also for picking the topic which is close to the heart of the Great Lakes region. The roundtable presents a unique opportunity to reflect on how the current mineral partnerships for sustainable future, as well the partnership, and as well as the element of industrialization, and also going to your question, does Africa benefit? Does the Great Lakes benefit? Statistics will show you that Africa benefits less than 3% of the global trade in minerals when they produce more than 30 to 35% of critical minerals required. I'll go to the question, I'll go to the reasons why later, but I would like to mention that for the Great Lakes region, for us as ICGRI, industrialization remains a critical pillar for the region's transformation and also for prosperity. As ICGRI, we recognize that mutual partnership and industrialization itself are essential. However, we do recognize that at the moment, we do not have in Africa the necessary conditions to enable us have industrialization at its optimal and also create mutual partnerships. Why do we say so? And the onus is on us to create those conditions required for us to attain and be able to have mutually beneficial partnerships. There are a number of reasons leading to that, but first and foremost is the element of the instability and conflict in the region. As we speak now, we have conflict in the eastern of DRC, a critical region, a critical country with most of the critical minerals which are required to propel industries. With the growing levels of instability in the region, the risk for creation of mutual partnerships increases. And if we're not able to resolve the issue of instability, the issue of the drivers of conflict, which most of them, as you know, minerals at the center, and you find that well documented in our Lusaka Declaration, where our heads of state from the 12 member states really recognized and declared that there is a direct link between natural resources, minerals, and conflict escalation and initiation in the Great Lakes region. And as ICGRI, we are alive to that fact. However, there is also a more fundamental aspect in the nature in which our partnerships in the last decade have been designed. I think they have an inherent weakness in the sense that they focus more on the delivery of the products than the factors which should lead to the delivery of products. You find that most of our agreements emphasize on the need to have these critical minerals reach the destination and do not offer regard to the production integration or regional complementarities which should accompany these partnerships. There is little focus on the creation of infrastructure needed. As we speak now, the region has a deficit, huge deficit in energy, transport, and communication. But these are things which are ignored in our deals as we design these partnerships. We also have the partnerships have no ability to look at the issues of human rights, the issues of good governance, accountability, and transparency, which are vital for the maintenance of political stability, peace, and security. As I said, without peace and security, there would be no business. Given the high levels of unemployment and poverty in these regions, you'll find that these partnerships have no financing mechanisms to ensure that households benefit. These agreements do not focus on value addition, and hence they are lopsided when it comes to employment creation, leaving our youth, women and children at the mercy of negative forces, labor groups, terrorist groups, which are there to provide a shelter for them to be housed and given a livelihood. And hence, as we look at the risks, we should also look at how we negotiate. From what moral perspective do we sit down with these critical thinkers, our leaders to design this issue of ensuring that all aspects are looked in, not just aspects which relate to disruption of supply, but also promotion of livelihoods and security in these regions. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you very much for these very useful insights, as well as challenges, but also potential solutions. We'll now move to our next speaker, Marietta Jäger of the European Commission. Marietta, the EU is stepping up partnerships with African countries to secure its supply of minerals, essential for energy and digital transitions, while advancing sustainable development, notably through the EU Critical Raw Materials Acts and its strategic partnerships, all through global gateway projects. In the recent years, the EU has concluded partnerships with Namibia, the DRC, Zambia. The EC also co-chaired the UNSG panel on critical minerals last year. Through these cooperation instruments and collaborative efforts, how can the EU best support African industrialization ambitions? And where do you see critical gaps?
Thank you very much, Excellencies. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here. And especially now that we are heading to yet another EU-AU summit in Angola in a month's time, and we are celebrating 25 years of the EU-AU partnership. I see this topic absolutely important. And let me start by saying that EU sees Africa's continent as the major partner. And basically, the EU is Africa's first trading partner, and also you know that we are leading in FDI investments in Africa, and also in the ODA and humanitarian aid. But the issue is that Africa has a huge potential for growth and innovation. We all know that. And we have a population, 70% of population under 30, but also the continent is a home of 60% of world's best solar resources, and also 30% of critical minerals for green and digital transition. And here I would like to say that for us it's extremely important economic integration in Africa, because it brings really huge opportunities to spur the continent's industrialization by really creating the regional value chains, harmonizing trade policies, increasing cross-border flows, and also physical connectivity. That's why we are also very much supporting the, as you know, Africa Continental Free Trade Area, because we do believe that this is the world potential largest free trade area that we have. But of course, this is up to our African partners to decide. What is now on the table is, of course, everyday's news, you know, basically diversification and strategic autonomy, not only in the EU, but around the world. And that's why I would say that CRM, especially after the adoption of CRM Act, I would say that we are very actively involved really in supporting development of critical raw materials value chains in Africa, as you mentioned. Also, this is the external part of the CRM Act, and basically strategic partnerships that are concluded in the form of the Memorandum of Understandings. And now we signed 14 memorandums, 4 with African countries. And this is really not only the strategic interest of the EU to reduce the dependency, but I would say it's also foster economic and industrial development of Africa. So I would say it's a win-win situation for both partners, and I think that we should take it as an opportunity. And these bilateral partners with the resource-rich African countries really cover, as I said, the entire raw materials value chain, and in alignment, of course, with the country and the national development strategies. So this is my first point. It is done in line with the partners' priorities, and also basically what these roadmaps that we conclude after the memorandum are bringing is training possibilities, is skills development, of course, in full alignment and respect of ESG, so economic and social and governance standards, and energy and infrastructure, research in technology, and also, of course, business opportunities in investment in physical and, of course, infrastructure that we call 360 approach, that basically brings all the enabling environment, in the investments. And I would say that we see it as an opportunity, but again, we can only enable. We can do the technical assistance. We can bring even the, I would say, not so only grants, but blending and the guarantees in the occasion when it comes to the investments. But I would say that finally, everything depends also on the private sector and the business opportunity. Is there a offtake agreement? Is there interest of the company? And I would say that this is something that we are looking forward from the implementation of the partnerships, and I can talk maybe later about specificities of each and every agreement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to add one thing, because that I forgot. What is really in the heart of all the memorandums is the local content. So basically what we would like to do, it's a local value creation. To bring really additional value for the partner countries, so that also not only extraction but also processing is done in our partner countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing with us the spirit of the partnership between the EU and Africa. We'll now move to our next speaker, Bandi Mubi. Bandi, in your work with the Fair Cobalt Alliance, you have long championed ethical and responsible mineral sourcing, including as a founder of the campaign Congo Calling. From your experience, what are key elements that should be built into global partnerships to avoid extractive exploitation and instead catalyze sustainable development, environmental and human and labor rights in mining communities?
Thank you so much for your question. I think the first thing that I want to acknowledge is the progress that has been made. Because if you go back to the early 2000s, when millions of people lost their lives in Eastern DRC, the question that was often asked to companies, technology companies, as well as mining companies was, what are you doing to stop the sourcing of the raw materials that are originating from the DRC from actually fueling the war in Eastern DRC? And most companies inevitably, invariably said, well, we don't know how to trace our minerals. So progress has been made in the sense that companies now are having to account for how they're sourcing their minerals. But also with that, there were also a lot of challenges in the sense that the system also became corrupted, that you now have the system perverted in the sense that you then use the certification process as a tool to actually clean your to clean your act. So in a way, both progress but also failure in the certification process. So I'm talking about how the system has evolved from having to say we don't know how we are sourcing our minerals to now having to account, but also it becomes much more legalistic, like almost to comply with the audit system. And that's also an unfortunate situation to have. Now, along with that progress comes also the failure also to include local communities in that whole process. So many DRC citizens would actually say, as their biggest criticism, is that some of those processes are actually almost imposed on the local communities, and they have no say, they have no voice, they have no seat around the table to make sure that their voices are heard. So that was also one of the criticisms about how the change was happening, especially around traceability, transparency initiatives. But with FCA, which is the Fair Cobalt Alliance, we're trying to address all those difficulties that we've encountered, in the sense that, as opposed to just having, which is really based on the OECD guidance on due diligence for companies, how they can actually clean their act. We have worked now with local communities, especially in Lualaba, which is the former province called Katanga, where we're actually working with local communities to ensure that they are included in the process. We've created an alliance made up of mining companies, as well as technology companies, as well as local civil society organizations, in the hope that as we work together, we can now improve the system, not just from a system that is imposed on local communities, but where there is greater participation of local communities across the whole value chain. So that would be both acknowledging the progress, but also acknowledging the challenges that we still have.
Thank you very much. And you've already started to hint at how the sector has been looking inwards, but also outwards, and recognizing the major challenges, but also how to address them. And I think what we're hearing today from the speakers until now are really what solutions mindset has been adopted by various parties, recognizing challenges, but also really trying to see how we can overcome those. And in the same spirit, and from his own personal experience, we're now going to hear from Vincent Dufief from Imeris. Vincent, Imeris operations range from extraction to processing in more than 40 countries, including in Africa. What role can mining companies like yours play in shaping equitable partnerships with resource-rich countries that promote responsible mining practices, local industrialization, and value addition?
Thank you very much. Indeed, mining companies in Africa and everywhere in the world have a crucial role. And I would say that at Imeris, we promote three things. First is responsible mining practice. Second is local industrialization and value creation. And last but not least is equitable financial benefit sharing. So first one is about responsible mining practice. So it concerns first environmental stewardship, and secondly social license to operate. Environmental stewardship is paramount, especially in countries where there is a lower regulation than in others. And so we try to, I would say, import our good practice coming from operations that we can have in very highly regulated countries to countries where there is not such type of regulation. So we try to raise the bar, to improve the standard. And for example, in South Africa, where we have important operations, we do a lot of promotion on water management and respect of biodiversity, which is absolutely essential for us and for the countries where we operate. Second, the social license to operate, it has been mentioned, and it's all about the relationship with local community. Local community is not only a question of responsibility, it's a question of good business, because when you are a mining company, then you have a huge impact on communities, and if you want to do business properly, you need absolutely to have the best possible relationship with community. So this partnership, this dialogue are absolutely paramount, and it's not words. It's really a question of doing good business where we operate. The second pillar is promoting local industrialization and value addition. This pillar has, I would say, two aspects. The first one is about business. The second one is about skill and people. About business, it's simple. We are a large company, and we have to work with, I would say, good local partners. And to have good local partners, we try to develop a network of contractors, a network of company. So again, it's not by philanthropy. It's about good business. When you are in a country, in Africa, once again, we're talking about Africa, but it's valuable everywhere in the world. You prefer to have good contractors, and if the level is not there, but then you try, you help, you support the development of business, and you work with them. It's good for the country, it's good for people, and it's good for your company at the end of the day. And it's the same about skill and people. The second part of the subject is if you want to have good workforce, you need to have good and trained people. So that's why we invest a lot in the training of people wherever we operate. Last and not least is equitable financial benefit sharing. It has been mentioned also. That's obvious. We need to promote transparency, to promote good business practice, ethics and responsibility. These standards are the ones who operate all over the world, and we have to promote them in Africa, and even if the standards are lower, that's our role also to promote this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vincent, for sharing the experience of your group worldwide, but in particular in Africa. We'll now move to our next panelist, Zenzi Awases, of the Association of Women in Mining in Africa. Zenzi, mineral resources are a major source of income for many African economies, yet women remain underrepresented in the sector, often excluded from its economic benefits while sharing its negative impacts, from environmental degradation to health and safety risks. From your experience, Zenzi, can you share a success story where women's participation in mining and mineral value chains has improved economic, social, or environmental outcomes?
Good morning. Thank you. That's a very good question. And let me just jump on the same bandwagon as my brother Bandy did and say that I have to report that there has been some very good progress with the involvement of women in these very important discussions. And before I give you the example, I want to also add on the fact that, look, at the core of mining, at its core, mining exists really to convert mineral wealth into social and economic value, right? So when done responsibly, mining can fund schools, it can fund hospitals, create decent jobs, as well enable industrialization. But this purpose can only be achieved if we correctly steward these natural resources, these mineral resources, and this can be done. This discipline to turn finite assets into lasting public benefit, right, and not short-term rent capture. So for me, stewardship is about who participates in shaping and sharing that value. And here is where women's participation is not just a question of fairness, it's a question of effectiveness, right? Because when women participate meaningfully, the social, environmental, and economic outcomes are consistently better. Now, I couldn't think that there are obviously many examples thereof, but I want to narrow this down to one single example in Africa. In Zambia, there's one of my favorite stories is that of Namakau Kainku. In the mid-80s, she left her corporate job. She was working for Shell to go and mine aquamarine in a small part of Zambia. And when she arrived there, she was taken by the fact that there are no schools in that area that she's actually mining. So she used the profits of her, from aquamarine mining and established a school in that area. That school has just now celebrated about 20 years. It's outside Kitwe. And not only did she do that, so she established a school, and then she realized, but there's much more that's needed from there. She went around, when she was established a school, then she was discovered by UN Women, and they helped her go around Africa establishing women in mining groups to then share with them the importance of the work that they do. And in so doing, through associations, teach them about safety around mining, etc. So her leadership just demonstrates basically what happens when you involve women in mining. You share equitably the benefits of mining. So I'll stop there and do very good in 10 seconds before 3 minutes. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Sensi. Also, hearing how listening to the ground is extremely important to actually build solutions that matter to people, to communities that are needed, and that actually make a difference. We'll now move to our next speaker, Sven Renner from the World Bank. Sven, at the World Bank, he's over there. Sorry, we are linear, so it's a bit craning my neck. At the World Bank, Sven, you're responsible for the management of the Extractive's Global Programmatic Support Program, which helps resource-rich, low-income and middle-income countries benefiting from their mineral wealth, including through developing processing and manufacturing capabilities, such as through the RISE initiative. Can you explain to us how development finance, such as the World Bank, can support local value creation and beneficiation?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to all the speakers that came before me. It's a pleasure to be here. I would like to start by reminding us that the situation in which we are currently moving is quite different from what we've seen over the last decades. We are in a geopolitical situation which heavily influences mineral markets. That's one thing. And the other is that we expect demand for minerals to grow substantially and grow beyond the average that we've seen over the last couple of years. And that is not only driven by the energy transition. I think that we should be clear that, especially if we look at Africa, demand will be largely driven by urbanization, by GDP growth per capita. And in that context, the question is, what are the opportunities? I will be mentioning a couple of challenges that we see as well, but the question really is, in this new context that is marked by economic fragmentation globally, are there only downsides or are there openings for developing countries in their mining sector? If we think of demand growth in Africa, it is an imperative that the value is generated in Africa. And I'm thinking of infrastructure development, housing, etc. All that will require metals. If we think of Mission 300, some of you might have heard of that. It's a huge World Bank program that drives electrification, connectivity to energy of the population with the aim of connecting 300 million people. All that will require transmission lines and other kinds of infrastructure. So for us, the question is, where are the opportunities to create that value in Africa? The interest of mining countries to increase their value has been around for ages, and it hasn't worked many times. And there are reasons for that. I'm not going to go into that. It is globalization, the cost of transport, etc., which makes it feasible to produce bauxite in Australia and smelter it in Mozambique, etc. Can that be overcome? That's question number one. And the other question is, and we've been hearing that infrastructure development is very closely related to mining. So where can the mining industry used or leveraged to build energy infrastructure, transport infrastructure? And mining is a central off-taker, anchor off-taker for energy infrastructure. So we should really look at where the opportunities are to connect the dots, not look at only the mining sector, but where does it connect to a broader development? So that's the second part. Just briefly on what the World Bank is doing. So the RISE program has been mentioned. Resilient and Inclusive Supply Chain Enhancement was created 2 years ago. It is a donor-funded program that looks exactly at those links. What is it? How can we connect it to infrastructure development? How can we connect it to value addition? And with that, skills development. We conduct, on demand of governments, comprehensive programs that assess A, the mining potential, B, the need for infrastructure investment to make that work. Where do we have to build power plants? How can they be connected to communities, to broader economic development? And then what's the infrastructure, the transport infrastructure that's needed to transport the goods, and how can that also be connected to, for instance, agriculture, to connect the sectors to the market. We do an assessment of skills availability and programs to develop the skills that are needed to let's say, create or to implement all that program. We started working in Zambia with a Zambia roadmap. The roadmap was launched in the annual meetings last year by the Zambian finance minister. We are working we concluded in Malawi and Burundi. We are looking at Tanzania, South Africa as a market, of course, of mineral products, etc. One central element is regional collaboration. So if we think of competitiveness, if we think of building a mine production that can compete globally, we have to think regionally because we have to think scale. But that is a challenge of its own. I'm not going to go into the details there. I will add one last point, which is all this sounds very good. It is extremely complicated. And one of the reasons is that value addition that starts with a mine, that goes through refining, smelting and refining in the early stages of manufacturing, has one piece, which in many cases is not economically viable today, which is smelting and refining. There's a global overcapacity, we're talking about zinc, about copper, that makes it impossible to invest in a smelter and a refinery today. In fact, they are closing, with the exception of China, where we have the driver of global overcapacity. So the question is, in this context, how can we make it work? Just one hint, we need new financial instruments to make that work. And we are currently working on that. We are looking for partners, and we're designing a program that will speak to those requirements. Thank you very much.
Can I just add one thing? Because we just signed a cooperation arrangement with the World Bank, and this is one of the priority sectors as well. And I would just add that, in our, let's say, investment packages, we don't look only, on the local value, but and of course mining, as you said, but also hard infrastructure when it comes to, energy and transport. But moreover, I mean, it's also on schools, on hospitals, the whole, I would say, ecosystem that is really needed for local community to thrive. And just my last point, I'm very happy to know that 90% of SMEs are run by women in Africa. And that's why I'm very happy about your interventions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sven, and also Marietta for your quick reaction. We'll now move to our next speaker, Adan El-Kitri from OCP Group. Adan, OCP Group has built integrated partnerships worldwide that span the phosphate value chain, from local fertilizer production and industrial innovation to farmer financing and resource stewardship. Based on your experience, which best practices from the group's approach could help other mineral sectors unlock local value, build resilient supply chains, and catalyze inclusive industrial ecosystems?
Okay, thank you very much for your question, and good morning, everyone. Indeed, you're right. OCP has been a long player in the phosphate market and has a long history of partnerships worldwide. The first partnership we built was in 1996 with two European partners, and it's still ongoing. And then over the years, we built a couple of partnerships on the industrial side of the business, in the manufacturing, with many players from Europe, from Africa, from Asia. And this is something that we have in our DNA. The main objectives of these partnerships were really to create an additional value to our rock phosphate and build strong supply chains across the whole, minerals value chain. And this is something extremely important, and it started from the extraction, going to the processing, and then going down to the end user, who is the farmer, whether in Africa or elsewhere. And this approach can be applicable also to the other minerals. When we consider that rock phosphate is a matter of food security and national sovereignty, it's the same thing for the other minerals. We are talking about economic security and national sovereignty for other minerals like rare earth minerals. And we all have been witnessing this last couple of weeks the battle that has been going on between Europeans, US, and China about rare earth minerals. So this, what we have witnessed is that these countries have become really vocal in trying to build strong supply chains of their own in order to secure their own economies and their own manufacturing. So this is, very important to mention. In terms of best practices, if you allow me, I will give you 5 that we learned from our experience in the partnerships. The first one is that in this business, which is very capital extensive, it's very important to have partners, very important to have partnerships. It's important to build processing units, and these partnerships can only work and can only be successful if they are done on a win-win basis and win this win-win approach. Otherwise, they don't work. I think we have the best examples at OCP. We have, as I said, partnerships in 1996, which are very successful, and more capital is being put in these partnerships. The second best practice or lesson learned would be the importance of building ecosystem of companies around either the mines or the processing plants. And this is important because it strengthens the supply chain, as it gives an easy access to either services like maintenance or other products like spare parts, etc. The third, I would say, best practice is the building of knowledge environment or knowledge ecosystem. It can be done the easy way, which, the usual training centers around mining operations or chemical or manufacturing operations, or it can be the hard way, like we did, by investing in a state-of-the-art university. That's what we did. It started in 2017, and this university, which is today among the best universities in the world, is not only offering programs to students in engineering, finance, governance, etc., but it's also training hundreds or thousands of researchers on the ground in Africa to help them, get more knowledge about agri inputs, about soil health, about climate adaptation, etc. And this is something that we also use. This kind of research, we use them in our operation in those countries where we are present. So it's really a win-win situation. The fourth, I would say, lesson learned or best practice is to be able to develop partnerships with financial institutions. We are a century-old company. We have a very strong track record of investments, strong balance sheet, and this allowed us to really raise easily funds. It's also allowed us to offer financial services to the farmers, mainly in Africa. And just recently, a couple of months ago, we signed an agreement with IFC to mobilize around $800 million to strengthen 30 agricultural value chains across Africa by 2030. So this is something extremely important that one can achieve over time by investing in those areas. And the last and not least is the importance of investing in low carbon infrastructure. So this is extremely important because we have noticed that more and more customers and more financial institutions are sensitive to environment-friendly products, environment-friendly businesses. So at OCP, we are investing a lot in research, in green investment also. And what we have been doing, we have launched, I think 2 years back, a $13 billion investment program for green infrastructure. And this program is allowing us today to be 100% self-sufficient in terms of water utilization. By 2027, we will be self-sufficient. No, we will be using, green energy in our operations. So we already started in the mining value chain, replacing the diesel trucks with electric trucks, and all the equipment will be replaced with electric equipment. This will take place in the next 3 to 4 years. And since we are also one of the largest consumer of ammonia in the world, ammonia comes from natural gas. So we are also heavily investing in green ammonia in order to be totally self-sufficient by 2032. So these are more or less the best practices that I wanted to share.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Adan, for what we hope others can emulate as well in their practices. We're running a bit short of time, so I'm going to ask our panelists a second round of questions, but I'm going to ask you to please limit your answers to 1 minute, and please be precise and very concise. And we'll start with you, Emmanuel. Emmanuel, what role can regional institutions like the ICGLR play in reinforcing regional cooperation so that mineral value chains become true drivers of industrialization and shared prosperity? 1 minute, please.
Thank you very much. As ICGLR, we remain committed, Madam Chair, to ensuring that natural resources, especially minerals, do not fund conflicts in the region or escalate or catalyze conflict in the region. We'll continue coordinating our regional initiative against illegal exploitation of natural resources, which aims to ensure that member states adopt regional certification mechanism to ensure that as they exploit minerals, they adhere to OECD guidelines, which were adopted in 2010. We ensure that we continue inspecting mine site, protecting the chain of custody, promote third-party audit, and over and above, ensure that there's a conducive environment for trade which promotes mutual partnerships where value addition and livelihoods are protected. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And Marietta, in the same vein, briefly, if you could tell us a little bit, beyond investment infrastructure, skills, technology transfer, capacity building that we've heard from so many of the panelists today that are key to African industrialization, what role can the EU play in strengthening knowledge, technical training, research, local innovation, such as on market readiness, business competitiveness, or circularity leadership of mineral value chain actors, including SMEs, because I think this is something that we share a very keen interest on.
Thank you. I mean, you gave me 1 minute for this question. That's very challenging. But
the forum will have to reconvene
exactly.
Just on this.
Let me try. So basically everything you mentioned is in the heart of our global gateway strategy. Basically, it's all about the partnerships. But when you asked me about training, I mean, this is really in the heart of the memorandum of understandings. But we go much further than that. When it comes to the research, for example, we have a Africa Maval program, which is a research program on the horizon. program, and really it's contributing to the partnership for the responsible resourcing. We do plenty of training. For example, I can give you an example of Pan-Af Geo Plus partnership that basically I initiated. And basically what we do is we promote knowledge exchange and really of the geo-science and geo-capacity building, and also the foster mutual learning. And we also support, of course, the World Bank extractive global program support with quite a generous contribution, because we believe, and Sven hopefully will confirm, that we are doing a good job there in helping really low and middle income countries to fully benefit from their natural resources. But moreover, I'm extremely happy to report to you that we've been supporting for decades the EU ACP development mineral programs through the UNDP as well. And this is really focused on women. And I would like to mention also the regulatory part. And therefore, also for decades, we've been supporting EITI, because we believe that transparency and the legal framework is something that is also very much needed in protect the environment, social and government standards. Thank you very much. So I almost did it.
Thank you very much, Marietta, also for reminding us about the interface between public policy and regulations and industry standards, and how they really need to connect and work well together. Bondi, again, building on what you've mentioned to us earlier, in the past decade, many initiatives have emerged to promote better practices in the sector. From your perspective, how effective have these been on the ground in places like the DRC, and what knowledge and implementation gaps still persist?
Thank you. I think from transparency and traceability principles that were at the core of the change in the early 2000s, now we're talking about community involvement, and that's where we are strongest at. Fair Cobalt Alliance has actually built a model that actually can be replicated across the world. We have a mining site in Lualaba, Kamilombe, which is a model site, because when we first started working with the mining communities, there were a lot of issues, including child labor, including hazardous conditions that the miners were facing. And part of our work in Kamilombe has been about not only involving the mining communities in changing the situation, but in also ensuring that we are putting in place standards with the local communities involved, and also ensuring that we remediate child labor, we ensure that we also address hazardous conditions, and also working so that people will have livelihoods that allows them to receive a decent income in the whole process. So artisanal mining is something that can give prosperity to local communities, but we have to know how to make sure that they are involved in the whole process, not excluded.
Thank you very much for reminding us how inclusion is an extremely important dimension to constantly pursue. Vincent, I'm coming back to you. Again, brief, concise, 1 minute pitch. MLS is recognized for its climate and environmental commitments, and you told us a bit about that earlier. Can you share a concrete example of how the company has successfully balanced industrial development with environmental protection and emission reduction goal, and what role did industry standard play in that approach?
Very short, the world and the climate needs to electrify the fleet of vehicles to develop EV. So to respond to that, we are having 2 very important projects on lithium mine in Europe. The key question is, do we want to drive electric car with batteries on lithium that have been produced in with low environmental and standard social? The question is very clear, the response is very clear too, it's no. So we develop a very, I would say, high level of lithium in terms of environment. For example, we have this lithium mine project in the center of France, in Allier, which is by design conceived to be at the highest environmental standard, and it goes by, I would say, industrial decision that are very structuring, like having an underground mine, which is most costly, but which is, in terms of environment, biodiversity, respect, etc., much more performing. And we also have decided to use the train to the transport of the ore from the mining to the refining site to avoid any emission. So I would say, in short, if you want to be really responsible, you need to have industrial projects that are by design at the highest standard.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We're now going to come back to you, Sensi, and we would really like for you to tell us how, from your perspective, global partnerships with African countries embed and enable gender equity from the outset of mineral projects conceptualization.
Okay, I have 1 minute. So how do I make this concise in 1 minute? So I think the important part is to build. Inclusion must be built in design and not as an add-on. So consider having gender impact assessments, but all the discussion around gender from the beginning and not later on. That's quite important. Also, targeted investment in gender-related activities, if I will. I'm very cognizant of the time here. And also, make equity and sustainability part of performance and not just philanthropy. That's quite important as well. 15 seconds, I will leave it there. Yeah.
I really like what you mentioned about making sure that gender integration is part of KPIs and how it's used to assess effectiveness of delivery and implementation of interventions and programs. Sven, according to you, what drivers and enablers need to be leveraged, and what challenges remain to be unlocked on finance to achieve industrialization goal? You talked about risks and investment earlier, while respecting sustainability practices. So beyond purely the mining and extractives, but really the value chain that you were talking about, challenges with smelting and refining, but the rest of the value chain.
Long question, short answer. Sorry, long question. I'll try to give it a short answer. So what has to be in place, what needs to be leveraged? It's clear that to facilitate investment in, mineral value chains, there are a couple of things that need to be in place. So regulations, institutions, transparency. The World Bank has been a long-standing partner of EITI. Environmental protection. We work for many, many years also in closing the gender gap. We have a long-standing partnership with International Women in Mining. So I think the topic of the day is partnerships, and and that is really a very, very important part of it. So we are looking at financial facilities being set up in different countries, Netherlands, France, etc. EU has a Raw Materials Act. I think that no country can do that by itself, as well as no mining country will solve the problem by itself. We need to think of a solution that we can collectively agree on, and I'm acknowledging the support that we're getting from the EU as well as other partner countries. So I think that this is a part that we still have to work on. The other unresolved part that we see also in mining countries, we shouldn't forget to mention that, is artisanal small-scale mining. It has been mentioned, can be a very complicated part. Indigenous peoples' rights in in the context of mining is a very complicated part. So there are quite a number of things that we have to work on. And I think the best solution of doing that is in partnerships. Last word from my end, we have created a multilateral development bank working group on critical mineral value chains, which also tries to streamline the engagement that we have in the sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sven. And we'll close with Adan. Adan, what are the key roles and responsibilities that governments and private companies need to have to co-create local and regional industrial development?
It's very briefly. The partnerships between the private and the government are of utmost importance. Otherwise, are very important to be able to attract investments in the mineral or in any other industry. And this is something that we have experienced in OCP. Governments have to set the vision, and they have to make sure to create the right legal framework and the right investment environment with clear policies, clear incentives, etc. And then the private sector can carry on and invest and create jobs, create ecosystems, etc. So everyone has a role in this when it comes to investment. We met 2 days back with the ministerial delegation, and it was very interesting. They brought with them a couple of people from the private sector, and they wanted to inquire about investments in minerals extraction. And we asked them this question: what is the role? Why are you together? Usually we see one and we don't see the others. And they said, look, today it is so important for us, and it's so capital intensive that we need to work together with the private. Otherwise, we cannot do it ourselves. We are government. We are not financial institutions or investors. So we are here to help them, and they need to invest. So this cooperation between governments or public companies and private is extremely important.
And I think this is what summarizes beautifully, I think, this session, that partnerships need to be mutually beneficial. It has to be win-win for all parties, whether governments, whether the private sector and industry, whether civil society and local communities. I would like to really sincerely thank very much the Forum for having organized this panel this morning, as well as our very distinguished panelists coming from broad spheres of the actors that are very active in this sector. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And we look forward to seeing you in a similar conversation next year, hopefully, if the Forum does one. Have a very good rest of the day.